Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Super excited to have everyone here. Ginger, we'll kick off with you. Just about a short intro.
I'm Ginger Armbruster. I'm with the City of Seattle. I'm our Chief Privacy Officer, and I direct a division that's responsible for data privacy, accountability, and compliance. I'm almost a Seattle native. I moved here very young, and I'm about to launch my child off to college.
What college?
She's going off to Seattle University.
Close to home.
Close to home.
You got to be happy about that.
I'm thrilled.
Fantastic. Ed?
Hi, my name is Ed Odom. I'm the Race and Social Justice Lead for the Seattle Information Technology Department. I'm a retired military veteran. I'm a diehard Knicks and Giants fan. Don't hold that against me.
Hard Knicks fan.
Yes.
Last time you've been to Madison Square Garden?
When Patrick Ewing failed to dunk the ball and he finger rolled it.
When I was in diapers? Before that?
It was when you were in diapers.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure of it. Pretty sure of it.
Awesome. Anna?
Anna LaNasa-Selvidge. I am the Organizational Change Management Lead in Seattle IT. Let's see, I've been in Seattle since 2007. I've worked downtown since then, and I love Seattle. I think Seattle's a great city, so now that I get to actually work for the city, it's been pretty cool.
Quick follow-up. Favorite breakfast spot that Michael and I should go to tomorrow morning?
I would say I really like all the Portage Bays, and they're all over. If you've not been, they have a great breakfast bar, like pancake bar, that you go in and you just like whip up all the stuff that you want on your pancake.
Okay. I should have prefaced, I have an allergy to gluten. Do you know if they do gluten-free pancakes?
There is a vegan place. Yes, I can't remember what it's called, but I'm going to find it afterwards. I'm going to send it to you, but it's a vegan, gluten-free, very healthy. Unless you're wanting bacon, then
Connect you to people who know things.
we know. Yeah,
You know people who know
we
things.
know
People
people.
who know people.
I love healthy. Greg, returning. Yeah,
It's been 3 whole weeks.
it's been 3 whole weeks. I know. I love it. And I had you on you were a guest speaker on my private community too, before that.
The Collaboratory.
Yeah. Love it. Quick intro.
I'm Greg Smith. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the City of Seattle, part of Seattle IT. I also direct the Security and Infrastructure Division. So I'm responsible for both security and infrastructure functions at the city. I'm a lifer in the Seattle area and excited. All 3 of my grown kids are on a trip together in Scotland right now, and I'm envious. I'm getting pictures daily.
So you ended up here on this podcast and not,
It's kind of the same thing as being in Scotland.
yeah. No, it's not.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Michael?
I'm Michael Cruz. I'm the Director of Data and AI for Microsoft State and Local Government. Been doing this for about a decade plus. And prior to that, I worked for Snohomish County for 15 years. As their enterprise architect was my last role there. I'm a lifer as well, born and raised in the South Seattle area. And my 3 adult children are not in Scotland. They're various places across the West Coast, but all UW graduates. One sounds like he's going to be playing against the Seattle U team pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when soccer season rolls around next year. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Greg, let's kick off with you. Second podcast, really excited. Just give us a quick landscape and vision. It's a big question, right? For the city of Seattle's cybersecurity posture and just the vision that you have for AI.
I think we have a lot of challenges. Any public sector entity, you talk to a lot of public sector folks, and you know that we in public sector have the challenge of many lines of business. So we are an interesting target for many different types of threat actor demographics. So you may have folks, nation state actors that like us because we have critical, or interested in us because we have critical infrastructure. You may have financially motivated actors that just want to ransomware us. You may have hacktivists because we have public safety and public services and other things that people may disagree with. And so I think public sector agencies are unique in that we might not be popular with a number of people, or we might be a good target for a number of people. We have to think about all of that, and we also have a lot of different lines of businesses to understand as well. Add to that, too, that in 2 years, 2026, we're going to be a host city for the FIFA World Cup. And for 60 days or so in that year, we will have a bunch of teams and their fans playing games, training all over the region at the same time that all the spotlight is on us. So we have a lot to think about in terms of attack surface. We have a lot to think about in terms of the profiles of the types of people who might want to hit us. So when I think about our posture and kind of the vision for how we're going to proceed, one is just that, getting a handle on our attack surface, dialing the knobs where we can, and thinking about how we become a harder target, continually improving. AI, I expect to be a part of that. And today, I think, as we talked on the earlier conference today, it's going to be, there's still promise that we want to see realized before we fully invest, but we know that the threat actors that I just mentioned are already leveraging it. They're already figuring out how to weaponize AI, and we need to figure out how to leverage those same tools to our own benefit. And the other piece of that vision is just truly having a good understanding of our risk. We know we can't stop everything. How do we understand our risk so that we can protect what truly needs to be protected and make the investments, prioritize the work as best we can, because there's no way you can say that we will never have a cyber event. It's really just how do we limit the material impacts. It's a thumbnail sketch, high enough level.
Yeah, no, it's great. And the mayor spoke earlier this morning, and he was just fantastic about expressing his strong commitment to Seattle IT, and which is fun. Now, he played college football, so for me, it was like an awesome locker room talk. And I was like, oh, it's like a halftime speech right now. Like, you could just tell. And I'm like, the guy's arms are way bigger than mine. And so he's amped up, he's fired up.
He did talk about the connective tissue that we are in Seattle IT across all those many departments.
Yeah.
And how many departments collaborate together to deliver some service. It may be this department A, B, and C for a service here, it may be department X, Y, and Z for a different service. But underneath the sinew is all Seattle IT and the networking and the services and the business applications. And from my perspective and Ginger's perspective, protecting the realm from the perspective of privacy and cybersecurity.
Yeah, you all are the nexus. Ginger, I love how you described this, and I have it in quotes, but you described AI as a glitter bomb, and I thought, wow, that's so good, because I have a 6-year-old too, and it's just such a great picture that AI as a glitter bomb has exploded before we figured out how to clean it up. This is out, right? So talk about the unique privacy challenges AI poses for city governments and how Seattle is addressing those concerns.
I was here and started our privacy program. We were one of the first ones in the nation. And what always struck me is people who interact with the city don't always have a choice. Critical service delivery, emergency services, public safety. You're either having a really bad day or a really bad day. And not always, but a lot of the services we deliver require a lot of data collection people really don't have a choice about. It's not like I'm going to Amazon or I'm going to an online anything and buying something. I can see the immediate why I'm handing information over. The amount of sensitive, personal information really becomes a challenge, not only from data protection and cybersecurity, but also from the privacy angle. Giving people very clear idea of how we're going to use data, how we're going to use their information, who we're going to share it with, how we're going to protect it. All of those principles that we've worked on privacy translate also to artificial intelligence, because now information can be used, scooped up in ways we don't even know about. And the black box that can become the repository of all the information that an AI entity is scooping up becomes a concern in terms of how do we protect information from being misused or being mischaracterized or being abused. Very early on, we looked at policy. How do we use some of these technologies that certainly are higher risk? And generative AI seemed to be the one that everyone immediately went, wow, lots of potential. Oh, wait, there's some things that could happen here. So we came up with worked with outside folks. We worked with outside experts and SMEs. We worked with other folks in this municipal government zone to work on what should be the principles, the driving principles behind how we use this technology. How do we use it responsibly and come up with a responsible policy on using and innovating with a tool that has tremendous potential, but also stuff we don't know about. So when I talk about a glitter bomb, it's one of these easier to get into things than it is to get out of them. I mentioned this earlier today. That was something my mom told me when I was a youngster, and it's true. And when it comes to data and making data available in ways that we don't understand what the unintended consequences could be, we have to be in that zone because we have a special responsibility. People expect us to be the adults in the room. We love being on the leading edge, not the bleeding edge of technologies where we really just don't know what we're about to get into. Working carefully with vendors, looking at data ownership, looking at how we can protect folks who may not have a choice about some of the data that we have. So it becomes a conversation about, let's not try to have to do that cleanup afterwards, because once you've exploded the glitter bomb, there's a lot of stuff to clean up. I don't know about you, but if you've ever had a party with confetti in your house, you'll find it for 20 years. I think I'm still opening boxes with confetti from my first husband's 30th birthday. But I'm just saying, it becomes a thing we don't, as a city, don't want to be responsible for, because it's all about, we are cautious about data protection, we are cautious about privacy, we are cautious about all the things, but really because we need to have the public's trust about how we are using critical information. And once lost, very hard to get that trust back.
Okay, glitter bomb. In Santa Barbara, we have Fiesta. And yeah, that confetti is impossible to get out.
It's everywhere, always, never goes away, right?
And then it gets wet, and then your sidewalks look like Fruity Pebbles because it's just transformed. I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99% sure the city of Seattle is a part of the AI coalition.
We are.
Okay, I was like, there's no way
Absolutely.
the city of Seattle can't be. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we joined that coalition. We were invited, and also we've collaborated with folks across the country on other issues like privacy, ethical data use. And in the end, what we're really talking about is data stewardship, from the security side to the what is okay to use, where are the risks, and what are the high risk and what are the lower risk opportunities to grow with this technology. Innovation is exactly what we want to help support, but not innovation at the risk of falling down on our responsibility as to be a responsible steward of data.
And with all that, Michael, from Microsoft's perspective, how are you thinking about the AI solutions to meet the specific needs and constraints of city governments, and what lessons have you learned working with local governments from San Jose to Seattle over the years?
Oh, there's lots of lessons to learn. I'm still thinking of Fruity Pebbles on sidewalk and breakfast food, but it can't be a glitter bomb if you don't do it correctly. I think over the last 2 years, especially around Thanksgiving of 2022 now, when the ChatGPT stuff started really hitting the walls, I think that's when the glitter bomb really exploded. It's, wow, this is amazing stuff. Over the years, it's been a crazy 24 plus months. It is tailoring that type of language model or foundational model to say, hey, follow these rules, right? Don't be the over assistant or overachieving assistant that ChatGPT tries to help it to be, right? Don't try to do all that. Focus on these things. And so across the country, that's been things like helping small businesses get licenses, because usually in health permits, it's park transportation permits. It's who knows what kind of permits, and how does any small business owner traverse or navigate that? Traditionally, it's been...
I ask these questions all the time, by the way, as a small business owner.
Exactly. And
in
so
California.
you know that you have to go to multiple desks in order to get that answer. What if you could have one interface, a no wrong door type thing, and get the answers that you need? But to do that, it means grounding the information, saying, forget all the other things that you might hallucinate about, Mr. or Mrs. LLM AI thing. Be more focused about this particular topic. And then let us evaluate the answers that you're putting out there so that we can say, no, that's not right. Yes, this is right. Do more of that. I think tailoring it to do that can help traverse over multi-thousand page documents or thousands of web pages of law to say, hey, what does this mean for getting whatever service we need out of the city? So I think there's lots of ways that you could do that as a city or state or any government. Those are the kind of things that we have to start thinking about, putting these solutions together, composing it. First is buying off-the-shelf AI, right? There should be some distinction about, did someone already do the work around making the rules proper for this particular use of AI? Because it's a huge term. It's an umbrella term that can be something that you're either adopting or something that you're building or something in between. And so that is I can just think back to multiple conversations like this, and it's a great conversation to have because it's encouraging to see, oh my gosh, we can they can have a force multiplier to help solve the multiple departments' needs. And then my other hat goes on, my citizen and resident of Seattle hat, and thank you for being protectors of stewards of our information, because it does take that too. There are definitely some anti-patterns and not great ways to apply this stuff. Joe, I think in a nutshell, there's pattern that's starting to come out of this brand new technology, and we're just scratching the surface of it now.
Yeah, 100% agree, just scratching the surface, especially everything from identity to actually getting into it as a citizen. I'm very excited about this because I use a lot of different services, both as a regular citizen consumer of services in California and then as a business owner. And each of those different departments have no clue that I'm the same person, right? Would love that consolidation piece. And then I would love suggestions. Oh, hey, by the way, you're a business owner and did this. Did you know that you can have this? Oh, that'll be a fantastic.
And we talked about that a little earlier in the early panel. In order for you as a business owner or resident to feel comfortable with that, we have to gain your trust. We have to earn your trust, and we cannot lose that trust. And I know that's part of our conversation around that.
And so much of our not only having these principles and these ideas of how we operate, but helping make all departments aware of what the risks potentially could be. So when they come to us for solutions and ideas, we can help guide around, here are the lower risk ways to do this. Oh, by the way, here's some contract language as you engage with vendors that are using AI so that we can all be pretty clear that we understand data sharing and data ethics, all the other things that we've baked in. How can we do a review to ensure that we understand fully what is happening with the solution that we're developing? And the awareness and opportunity to be that glue and help departments understand that we've given some thought and here's some guidelines. And here are the risks that you don't do it. I think that.
And how to continually improve it.
Yeah, exactly.
Your mileage may vary. I think I've given my fingers and eyes to TSA, Clear. They know where I'm at all times, everywhere. On the heart of organizational change and digital transformation is really about transformation around culture. Now, my wife, I did give her, I was like, hey, can you review this? She's like, is this your own opinion? I'm like, yes, this is my own opinion. This is my own opinion. But I am curious, how do you think about change management for the city to ensure the successful adoption of new technologies across Seattle's various departments?
It's a great question. I think any change has to start at the very beginning in concepts or even in ideation, I would say. When working with client departments, I think it's even getting in early to really understand what is the problem you're trying to solve with this technology solution. Because ultimately that's what we have technology for. It's to help us be more efficient or more effective, do our work in a different way that helps us, right? And then that in turn helps also the residents of the city. So I think it's always starting with a pause and asking and working with our partners in our client departments to understand what the problem is and seeing that problem from multiple angles, because it might be that they come to us with an already baked out solution that it's, oh, actually, if we did it this way, maybe we'd get to it sooner or quicker or be able to tackle multiple issues that you're experiencing and really pinpoint the root cause of it. So I think from an organizational change management perspective, if you have OCM early at the table, you're going to be much more successful. And I think the second part of it is really trying to understand what are the impacts to this change. We know what the change is going to be, but there's lots of impacts that are unknown, that are those unintended consequences that if you don't sit down and talk to all of those stakeholders, and especially the people who do the work, and they're going to be doing it differently, you might not realize that a particular policy or a particular business process was tied to this technology solution that now you don't have anymore because you've lifted and gone somewhere else. So I think AI is similar to a lot of just technology, which is we need to figure out how to get to that root cause of the problem and understand how to assess it and look at how it's being done elsewhere and how it could be done here. Or else you're going to deploy something that's not going to be very useful and people won't actually log on.
That was really good. I was thinking, I'm looking over here at my camera guy because we were talking about this, Tim, about there's an economist, Thomas Sowell, and he had a quote, and if I butcher it, you can just tell me and I'll cut the beginning part out. But it basically said that with no perfect solutions, there are only trade-offs. And I really like that because I've been thinking about that quite a bit now. I'm like, oh, I have to, there is no like shiny magical unicorn solution that's going to solve everything. There's only trade-offs, right? And especially from an organizational change management, there's not going to be a perfect solution, especially with various departments. And so there's going to be some trade-offs that are going to have to be made.
But I think it's being honest about what those trade-offs are and going through a discovery process and communicating it to your stakeholders. Because when we don't do that and then we go live, somebody goes to do something and it's not working anymore. And that's what causes the stress for employees. Yes, and also understand what they are and communicate it.
Yeah, communication's huge. I don't know if Savvy's in here. Maybe he went to go get some food, but yeah, on his slide, he's got his giant, it was like purple, and it was like, communication. You must communicate, right? Which I love. So he'll be on the podcast next. Ed, as the race and social justice lead, how are you looking at AI and new technologies that are implemented across Seattle? How are you helping to ensure that all the voices are heard and included?
That's a great question. It starts for me with first being excited about the possibilities, and then allowing the individuals who are either looking at these solutions or helping to program these solutions to understand what's at stake. And what's at stake is the protection of our city, the protection of our inhabitants, the protection of our employees. We have to take a look at the voices that need to be at the table. We need to understand the history of some of the demographics and what they've endured, and ensure that we're not inadvertently causing more harm or widening gaps further than they already are. We should be minimizing those gaps. And it's very complex. It requires people to have difficult conversations at times. Just as long as those conversations are respectful and they are rooted and coming from a place of wanting to be better as an organization, as a city, as a society, then things will work very well for us. So our number one goal is to ensure that whatever AI solutions that we're planning on using or are using, that the data is not being used in a way that's going to harm people who've already been harmed many times before. It's all about that trust. Once you lose that trust, you're not going to get it back. And many of these individuals are already very scared about what information in the government domain is going to do. What about individuals that are new to the United States? They're thinking that they're being surveilled or tracked. So we have to ensure that we tell these individuals or any other person that's new to the country or has gone through so many different terrible things that we're actually going to use this in a proper way to get you the services that you need on time and on target.
That's so good. I don't want to assign you additional job responsibilities, so I have no idea what your actual role as far as the day-to-day looks like, but I think it would be so good if you did a roadshow, an education roadshow. I've seen this with some other cities where it could be for cybersecurity, it could be for a number of things, but educating the public, because I've traveled quite a bit, and there are folks who are actually nervous about AI because their perspective is they don't sit at a computer all day, right? They have a different job. So it makes a lot of sense why they would be nervous about it. They just hear terms in the newspaper or their friends are talking about it, or soon it's going to be on your iPhone. Right?
We've all watched Terminator.
And we all watched Terminator.
Not to
I'm
become
scared.
sentient.
Yeah. So I don't know what your role is, but I think you would be great, especially with the military background and the conversation we had one-on-one. I think you'd be fantastic going around doing like maybe it's like a 6-week road show across the city, educating and just even listening and hearing from the different perspectives. I just made that up, but by the way, if that is...
It sounds very interesting, but I'm very committed to the city of Seattle right now.
No, the city of Seattle should pay you to do that.
But put me in the game, coach.
Yeah. City of Seattle should definitely pay you to do that.
Our library system, they often do those kind of educational opportunities and work with private and public folks to talk about issues, private sector organizations around that. And that's something that I think our current CTO has interest in. I think public engagement around innovation, because I've often, and we probably talked about this already, that what we are happy to give up to the private sector in exchange for goods and services is very different than what we are happy to give up to the government, because we do have that sense of something else is going to happen or could happen or historically has happened with information that we volunteer.
So I think that's the challenge with innovation, though. Innovation in the private sector is done totally different than innovation in government sector, because we have a high fiduciary responsibility with tax dollars, we have trusts, we have data, all of the reasons, right? We can't fail. And honestly, as a taxpayer, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
No, we want to overperform for our taxpayers and our ratepayers, but velocity is not necessarily the imperative. We don't have a sort of a competition dynamic that would maybe perhaps drive us to maybe have a different kind of risk tolerance there. Sometimes you have a risk appetite, because if you make the right choices with the risk appetite, you can really leap ahead. It doesn't really work for us in that same way. So taking baby steps makes a lot more sense for us in the public sector, I think.
And solutions need to be very solid. I mean,
They do.
we really can't go out there with something that's half-baked or not entirely.
I will say the one potential area where we might pay for that is in cybersecurity. If we truly do need to meet the challenge of AI-augmented cyber attacks and cyber threats, then we really need to be seriously investigating how we fight fire with fire on that front. And sitting back in a slow government way might not be a wise course.
Also, we need to consider everyone's needs.
Yes.
Not just a particular department or this particular group, but everyone's needs and how everyone needs to be benefiting from the use of AI.
I think I liked the comment that you made at the end that our current CTO, Rob is huge on culture. And so he might put you in. He's the coach, I'm not. I'm just a podcast host, but he might call upon you to get in the game and get out there a little bit. See? I love it. We mentioned the Gov AI Coalition, which is spearheaded by San Jose's CIO, Khalid Tawfiq. Fun fact, I've been to a Dodger game with Khalid. Aims to empower, I was looking at the mission, because I actually wanted to see the mission that they have. Aims to empower public sector AI use for public good. As Seattle CISO, you just mentioned a little bit of that, fighting fire with fire, but how do you see the intersection of AI and cybersecurity evolving and then those unique challenges within government, like you just mentioned? You can just pick up where you just left off.
Yeah, I realized I was kind of jumping to the next question, but it's interesting because Mayor Harrell spoke earlier today, and he was very passionate about his longstanding involvement in technology governance because he's very interested in it. He was recently named as one of only 2 elected officials on the Department of Homeland Security's AI Safety and Security Board, which is this huge group of titans of industry, leaders of the big tech companies, including Sam Altman from OpenAI and Satya Nadella. Mayor Harrell and I believe Wes Brown, the governor of Maryland, are the only 2 elected officials on there. And that is really, I believe, intending to spotlight how the AI capabilities can help secure our critical infrastructure in the United States in the face of really sophisticated threat actors that want to do harm to where we're weakest, or I don't know, not weakest, but where the gains for the attacker would be greatest. And so there's a very interesting public-private partnership to drive AI into cybersecurity where we need it most. And I opined earlier in the conversation that I think that what's going to be interesting there is how some traditionally conservative industries are going to respond to this, because there's a lot of reasons to be very cagey with introducing new technologies into certain types of operational technology, SCADA environments, and those types of things. The fact is they are now becoming more and more the subject of attacks, so there's some sort of adjusting of mindsets that need to occur there. For our perspective here in Seattle IT, we are the pathway to critical infrastructure. We're, I think, widely seen as the conduit in to those environments where bad things can happen. So we need to be thinking about how we amp up our cyber defenses, perhaps leveraging AI to do just that. And like I said, how do we analyze our logs faster? How do we do predictive analysis? How do we use natural language so that our security engineers can more readily query all that data to get to whatever needle in the haystack they're looking for? And so that's where I think we can start to see that intersection.
Yeah.
And I also, where Seattle's right there in the fore with Mayor Harrell's involvement there.
That's fantastic. Ginger, you touched a little bit on it earlier, but I do want to go a little bit deeper on the importance of data stewardship. Can you talk a little bit more about how you think about what it would take to prepare the data for the AI initiative? So that data piece is really the first piece that you've got to get right.
Yeah, I think it's identifying, classifying, it's all the stuff that's not very sexy. Identifying, classifying, knowing what you have to know what needs to be protected. And I think it's the part that is the hardest slog, the thing that costs more money than folks really want to spend until they realize what the implications are if we have not identified what is it we are mostly needing to protect and not make available. And that is, we are told by our vendors, that's what you need to do. We know we need to do it. That's probably the piece before we get too involved in allowing things to crawl through our information, making sure we've identified and secluded and constrained and protected information that should not be made available. critical infrastructure being, again, an example. But also just super sensitive information from the public, information that should not be made available. It would be redacted if a public records request came open. Those kinds of data that need to be protected. And I think making that very conscious decision about where exactly we're going to play, what information is going to be made available, and how we can go for the lowest risk as we learn this world. And that can be really hard because we have a lot of needs. We have a lot of places where this could be of interest. We talked a little bit about private and public sector being so different. A lot of the solutions we hear about often are developed for private sector with private sector thoughts around it, and finding those places where public sector have different needs, different limitations, and different responsibilities become difficult. We have to come up with that. We have to do a lot of our own work because we have it. We uniquely know what it is we need and our requirements.
That's great. Michael, this dovetails really well. Local government, the unique challenges, right? I know you're smiling, but public record requests and data transparency when implementing AI technologies, how is Microsoft looking to address these concerns in Copilot to accelerate AI adoption in the public sector? And you can speak broadly if there's not a specific.
I'll get specific about it. Well, it actually goes even more specific to say that in my prior role at Snohomish County, I was the person in charge of doing all the e-discovery and then burning that to CD at risk of suffering a financial penalty, right? And so we know in this state, it's different in multiple states, but it is critical that we answer that question. And I just put myself back in the place where I was 20 years ago, and I couldn't imagine burning a CD of all the interactions that one might have with a Copilot and all the answers that might come back if that becomes discoverable. So I'll say that that's currently at legislative board of whether or not that type of information, a client attorney privilege, right? So that might fall under the same constraint of whether that's discoverable. If it is, then there are constraints or configurations that can occur inside of the Copilot. That's anything from if you're using a Copilot for security, I don't think that should be, this is Michael speaking now, opinion, Michael. So I don't think your security logs or any conversations with your security logs should be discoverable, nor should, hey, help me build out a slide deck with these points in my Word, or help me create a pivot table using 4 of these targets. But maybe the conversations where it says, hey, help me draft new legislation based off of existing legislation, maybe that becomes it. I don't know, right? So I will say that the things that we're building into our products and services, here's where I get specific. The Copilots that we publish out there for our customers to purchase and use will have built-in retention inside of it with the e-discovery stacks that are available for all the rest of the discoverable things. It'll be up to each agency, each organization to decide what falls under the law of our PDR and FOIA rules. But the facility to do that will be there for the things that we produce. For the things that we don't produce, where we give you the raw service to create your own solution, we also will give you the tools to say, hey, here's how you capture telemetry about that. And we're learning quite a bit about those types of solutions over the last 2 years that we'll be able to share practice as well about how to do that effectively. It is definitely new, right? It's not new, it's just the scale of it is just so exponentially different than the types of things we had to worry about before generative AI. But we can, I think, learn from what we know about existing PDR discovery and apply it. It's just going to take a different type of thinking around it.
And I can tell you we've already had public disclosure requests for anything and everything to do with generative AI. Thank you for helping us with that, because it really is, what does that mean and how far and deeply can we go, and what is policy, as in we have to remember to do that, and how much is generated and available, like metadata. How do we make that available? It's daunting to consider one search, how much information would we have to try to recreate or reconstitute or make available. And while we're figuring out the legalities of that, we're still doing the work. So
it's not easy work, but I'll also say that maybe it's time to revisit it to change some of those rules and laws, because I don't think if we open up that box, does every Google search, every interaction with the internet, does that become discoverable? I think our friends over at state legislature who are actively talking about that, along with the city and other jurisdictions, these are the kind of conversations that are there. As a company, we're listening to it all. And I do agree, sometimes we cater to the private. I will say that there is a team of us just specifically around the government that want to make this right for all government, which is why it's not quite available for government yet. But
takes a little more
hopefully
time.
by the time this hits the tapes or
But
the internet, it'll be.
when we talk about the Sunshine Law here in the state of Washington, 1972 was a really long time ago. and technology and data production no one ever envisioned. Probably anything more than file cabinets.
Reels, tapes, all
Reels,
that.
tapes, exactly. Of the kind of, that's the mountains of information we have to sift through now.
Fantastic. Anna, in your experience, what strategies have been most effective in fostering innovation and adaptability within city government, especially when it comes to adopting new tech?
I think from an OCM perspective, change management is about the people, right? It's about ensuring that people are aware that a change is coming, that they have a desire to move into that adoption of that technology. They have the ability and the knowledge, and that all of that is being reinforced. So I really prescribe to a lot of ProSize methodology using like ADKAR and Clark. Those are some of the frameworks. But I also think part of it is there's twofold. One, you want to utilize your people managers. Your people managers are so important. And I think this isn't just in this organization. I've seen this consistently in so many organizations, is people come into an organization and they get hired as a manager because they're doing really well at their job. But then we don't have a robust support system for those new managers coming on board. And they have such a huge shape in terms of how we can support those employees coming in, right? So I think this is like industry-wise, like in management, this is not new. But I think they have such an opportunity to come in and lead their teams. And that's something I'm really excited. We're focusing here a lot in our department, and I'm sure you're going to talk to Ed about this in the next session, is how to really support our people managers to stand up and lead in any type of change. So I think people managers are huge and crucial. But what we were talking about earlier is, what are we giving up when we move from paper process that now is we're moving to a digital process? What are we giving up in that space? And how do people even identify in that space, right? I think identity is really important. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have somebody that is so used to an old technology and they're the go-to guru in training people up, that's an identity. They get to have that. And now you are deploying a new technology and either they don't have the skills or that it's all brand new and they're nervous to make a mistake and they're no longer this expert. You're taking that away when you deploy this new technology. So I think it's really important to recognize that might seem trivial to some, but it's really important to somebody else. And everybody experiences change differently based on their background, their experiences. We have to be thoughtful about where people are, meet them where they're at, and really utilize our managers to help coach people through that change.
So good. No spoiler for the later podcast, but going to have Lindsay Pollock come on. So she's the author of The Remix. So she's going to give a keynote tomorrow. And I was going through her book, and she mentions Google and sorry, Michael. She mentioned no,
I did too.
It's a big company. Mentioned Google and how they coach their teams and their managers. And it was pretty fascinating because there's actually another book that I was thinking about that's really popular in Silicon Valley called The Trillionaire Coach. And it's from Eric Schmidt and a few other co-writers and authors about how to coach, like what they specifically did in coaching these executives that created basically $1 trillion in value, of collective value for these companies in Silicon Valley. And so there's some of those common themes. But I love what you said about meeting people where they're at is so important because everyone is on a different journey professionally, but also personally. And so sometimes you got to figure out, in order to capture the heart and mind of the person, you've got to dial in where they are. That's why I wanted to meet with each and every one of you, right? Yes. Greg I'd already met with a couple times, and he was on vacation, but the rest of you I wanted to meet because I wanted to figure out how do you think, and I love you. I met with Ed, and we met for 40 minutes, and we're getting this military history and background, and it gives me just his frame of mind, and just connecting with basketball and coaching and working with kids. Yeah, it was fantastic insights. Ed, we're gonna end with you, and you're staying in that chair too. You're not even going anywhere. Look at them. They're back there. You can see Ed for another hour. It's great.
Double header.
Yeah, it's a double header. Exactly. It's like the TNT double header that was back in the day. You mentioned the importance of bringing people together rather than focusing on divisive conversations. This is probably one of my favorite pieces that you said when we met one-on-one. How do you apply this philosophy when addressing potential biases in AI systems and ensuring that they serve the communities equitably?
It's really complex. First, just to be fully transparent, we're still going through it as well. We have to focus on having respectful conversations, respecting one another, developing a culture to where we can understand the differences, but then we can use intersectionality to talk about how we're all pretty much the same and we have the same needs. And that all ties into understanding your particular bias. Everyone has a bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, everyone has a bias. And being able to identify it and have that growth mindset to work through it. And also understanding that people have different beliefs, but just because we have different beliefs doesn't mean that we can't coexist and be respectful to one another. It's not about shying away from difficult conversations. Yes, still have those difficult conversations, but don't play the blame and shame game. Give people grace to where they can make a mistake, but at the same time, holding people who you know are going to try to harm others, holding them accountable. I say that all to say that it is very important for us to learn from one another so we can give the best service and support to the communities that we serve. So we have to really dig into it and understand that we're going to make mistakes, just as long as we're coming from a place of goodness, a place of love, trying to do right, just as long as we're not really violating the laws and the policies that we set for the city of Seattle and our race and social justice policies, that we're really trying to do the right thing. We want to make sure that we're not harming people. We're removing the harm that people have been going through, and then we're providing pathways for people to get the services that they need on time and on target, like I said earlier. And it's all about winning the hearts and minds, like you said.
And importantly, this is artificial intelligence. It's not artificial sensibility. It's not artificial common sense. This is a technology that does something very well that also doesn't do what humans do.
Absolutely.
Which is put the human there, to put the heart there, the common sense, and the feeling. And I think it's important.
It is very important to keep our goals and our priorities at the forefront, which is making sure that we're doing right by people. Many people have been harmed for whatever reason. We need to understand what those harms have been, what people have gone through, and then we need to make sure that anything that we're putting into our AIs is not going to perpetuate stereotypes or hurt people again and again.
I think about the language that you use is simple as questions you ask, how you deliver the statements, and if you were to go into like a ChatGPT or any LLM, depending on what you put in there, you will get an answer, and it's very interesting because depending on like your perspective or your bias or the assumptions you're making, you'll get a different answer. But you need to understand that's actually an insight that you need to be aware of, and organizations at large need to be aware of. So depending on the answer that you want to get, the outcome you want is going to depend heavily on the inputs that you're putting in there. And so I think it's great to bring everyone to the table so that you can have those perspectives brought in. And I'm just making up different LLMs, but there'll be potentially different LLMs for different use cases. Some will require more investment than others.
Yeah. And you're making me think too how we respond when something's in writing back to us. So the authoritative nature of the information that comes back from a prompt makes it look like, oh, that's fact. Because look, it's written right here. I can print it out. It looks like a book. Books are
These
right.
are the types of skills. So if you think about artificial intelligence from like the change curve, we're in a free fall. We've been in a free fall since November, 2020, in terms of it's happening, it's here. And
not a drill.
We're dripping. Yeah, we've dropped down and we're still, I think, somewhere in the down because there's still a lot of unknowns. We're trying to catch up with regulation. But the reality is pretty soon we're going to start to co-op because you're going to have things like Copilot. You're going to have things like other organizations and companies that are going to have AI in their technology solution. And they're already working on it now, right? So the reality is we have to figure out, okay, how do we augment? From a change perspective, if this is happening and we know that we want to comply and we know we want to protect people's data, then how do we augment it to support our work and at the same time do it in a responsible way?
And one of the things I talk to my team about, and we all experience this, is bring people along on the journey of what you're thinking about. My perspective is different than yours. When we talk to departments who have talked to a vendor and get excited about a solution and come running up, and we have to say, let me take you on a journey so you understand the privacy risk we may be facing, the security risk, the bias risk. What will this do to your team if we put this change in place? I think all of that is an important piece of it, because that journey is different for everybody. And you mentioned that too. And I think bringing people along on your version of that helps us be more holistic.
Oh, and I'm glad you're all asking those questions to your business units, because they do get excited, right? We get the phone rings constantly because they want to do more, right? Because they see, again, the benefits of it. I'm glad you're asking those questions, because then it helps us distinguish, okay, this one is actually less apt to have that issue of bias, right? Again, if a pipe has a hole in it versus a crack on it versus it's good, right? That's an easy one for AI to handle, and we don't feel so as sensitive about that case. But at the same time, we should absolutely keep asking the questions, because, are we saying that we want to create an AI that helps distinguish whether or not someone gets a service based off of where they're coming from? Then absolutely, that requires yes, it's a different risk. The good news, though, is that we have learned quite a bit since November 2022. And so some of those prompts might include a system prompt that says, hey, don't answer authoritatively, answer advisory, right? If you've seen some of the AI that have come out from, say, Khan Academy's AI bot, it's meant to work with students in the classroom. It never gives them the answer, right? It walks you through the Socratic method, which helps for me, who always wanted to raise their hand in class. Yeah, if you could tell by now, I was that kid.
You were that
but
guy.
I was that, yeah. But it means, okay, I could keep exploring this topic, but help walk me through, just like a teacher would, a force multiplier for the classroom. Similarly, we could do this in a place that says, look, I'm not going to make a decision on whether or not you have this service, but tell me more, right? Let's gather more information so that I can include the human in the loop to make that call. I'm super excited, can you tell? But absolutely, to your point, we have to continue asking that question, because I will speak for the company here. We have learned quite a bit of lessons the hard way about what happens when you release something too early for it.
And it's always on the front page, right?
And you also have to have diversity in the humans in the loop, because everyone's journey is different. Everyone's perspectives are different. So you have to have different people to be able to look at those outcomes and say, hey, there's a problem with that outcome. I might not catch that problem, but Ginger might catch it, Anna might catch it, Michael or Greg might catch it. And unbeknownst to me, I had a bias and I didn't know, so it flew under the radar for me. So that's why diversity and change is going to be very important when talking about humans in the loop.
We've also realized there's benefit in coming together and talking about what solutions are out there that are exciting, so we can hear from each other. And we've done one of those. It's time to do another, to talk about a community of interest. What are you doing out there? It's been a couple months. What is everybody doing? What are you finding that's useful? What might have a citywide, enterprise-wide application? And then we learn, and then we hear, and then we can hear what people's concerns are and where some solutions that we never thought about.
Going back to an earlier point, and I know we're trying to wrap probably, but I'm thinking about that idea of innovation, and we have to get it right, and can't fail fast, fail big or otherwise. But I think there's still room to say, maybe not innovation, but we have to learn more about this. Can we pick a use case that has low impact, learn quite a bit from that, and then apply it to our larger goals of the roadmap of getting to AI for productivity for our residents and things like that? Some places do a Shark Tank idea. Let's come up with an idea, you pitch it, we fund it we internally. So others do what I just described, where it says, hey, there's an opportunity here to learn from it. The key, though, for an organization, as you mentioned, Anna, is like, I just want my thing done, versus, for the greater good, let's explore this concept. I think as just like Mayor Harrell said, if we can channel or organize together to say, yeah, this as a city, we can do great things. We just need to partner up. That trust and credibility.
Partner and pause, because I feel, and I'm saying feel, but I do think when we have a problem and we're experiencing it, we're wanting to then get to a quick solution. And therefore you don't have the time to then partner.
We are funding a small experiment with communications generative AI across the city, where we will buy 20 licenses of a solution, and then we're learning about who wants to use it for what are some of the things we're finding out. Because we also want to build a smart community. We went through the journey. We saw what this looked like. This didn't just show up on I can use this thing. I actually saw where some of the issues were. And that's an exciting thing to be able to do. Now that becomes difficult. We don't have all the money in the world to continue to do those kind of things. But I think finding low risk areas that are not going to harm individuals, that we can be careful about, we learn a lot. And that helps us when we get into the higher risk or when we consider other solutions.
And it also helps build trust because build trust for employees. Employees may not, some people are like, yes, AI, and other people are like, I don't want to touch it. That seems to.
And when we're right there with them, they can say, oh, I see why Ginger was so concerned about that issue. I'm seeing it right here. Oh, and she tells me she's concerned about this. Maybe I'll listen. It's nice to be able to build that because we're going along with you.
You're bringing people to the change instead of the change happening to them.
Before we can fully have artificial intelligence, we have to work on our cultural and emotional intelligence, or it's not going to work.
We don't know when we've gone off the path, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm excited to see where this is going to go. I actually hosted a one-day CIO retreat in Santa Barbara with some of the surrounding counties and universities, and one of the gentlemen went down and actually had a Microsoft co-pilot day, one of the CIOs, and he came back and he said to me that Microsoft, there's something like 90,000 government email domain or like addresses that people are just going off the shelf and buying. So this looped this whole conversation, shadow AI, that we ended up talking about. So it used to be the good old shadow IT. Now it's shadow AI. How do you manage that? I only brought that up so you'd come back for a second podcast. See how I hooked that right there?
And that is for real. Everybody who has a credit card.
Yeah, anyone with a credit card.
Interesting. And how are we going to know? How are we going to manage? How do we help? Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because that's across all generations, from boomer to Z, alpha. Yeah, we've got the statistics to show it. There's a lot going on. I don't know. I don't know, Joe, if you're bringing that up to say, hey, warning, or what your hook is there. Continue the conversation. But it definitely is something that we want to help get a handle on. Just like you said, shadow IT, shadow AI. Imagine trying to track it through all the different personal accounts. It's like using a Hotmail account for your personal.
Or a Dropbox account, or any other ways that we could get concerned about data leakage. And a lot of the new capabilities they're startup level organizations, and our staff in the city are using them or maybe even piloting them in a legitimate way, but we don't know anything about their cyber posture and how they are being stewards of city data and city information. Yes, start with low leverage data, that's best. But at some point, we're going to start scrutinizing those organizations to be at the right level of security on their end.
As we should.
As we should, yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming on the Public Sector Show by TechTables.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Joe.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Boom.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.